Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. This is The Slate. We are a DraftKings program. Take you up until just before 6 o'clock on a Monday, March 20th. Brendan Glasheen, Jeff Ulrich, your Monday duo. And we're going to dive into a bunch today. We're going to talk golf, Dell Technologies Championship coming up later in the week. Jeff, that's in Austin, right? Austin, Texas?
Austin, Texas. Yep.
Okay, so we'll hit on that later on, and we'll also dive into the NHL. Jeff's got a few spots he likes tonight. Also wants to look at the futures market with the regular season winding down in hockey. Jeff specializes in hockey and golf, and he can talk football too. We're gonna start with some football. Detroit Lions. We're gonna dive right into this. We're not wasting any time. C.J. Gardner-Johnson signs. He leaves Philadelphia, goes to the Lions on a 1-year deal. If you read the backstory, they couldn't work out a long-term deal in Philly. So he essentially goes to Detroit on like a prove-it deal and hopes that he can get better in the market next year. But it's to build to the Detroit Lions. Folks, you have to start wrapping your head around this. The Detroit Lions are the favorite to win their division this coming year. It's crazy. They're plus 160 on the DraftKings Sportsbook to win the NFC North. I'm not spending time on the team. I don't want to spend much time on the team that's plus 400 because that's what happens. A lot of us fall into that trap as sports commentators. You don't talk about the other teams enough. All you talk about is that guy and that team. What about the other teams? Well, the Bears have been in the news because of the draft, the number one pick acquisition by Carolina, and the Lions haven't been talked about a lot. I think the Lions, deservedly so, are the favorite in this division. What do you make of it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that from a media standpoint, like mainstream, sure, yeah, people probably haven't been talking about the Lions. I think that from a futures and a bettors perspective, I think the Lions probably are going to get a lot of views very, very, very quickly, and they already have. Their odds have dropped from plus 2,800 on DK down to plus 2,500. This is a team who, prior to the season, what they really needed to do is they need to beef up the pass rush a little bit, but they have some younger guys going back there. But they needed to get the secondary figured out. They needed to limit pass attempts. They needed to get some playmakers who could, work inside, limit some of those tight ends and running back passes and yards after the catch. And they got Cameron Sutton, who's a very versatile corner, and now they have a safety in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who is just going to help more. The Lions have gone out and done exactly what they needed to do. And we haven't even hit the draft yet, where they've got 2 first-round picks. If this team adds like a Dalton Kincaid or something at the draft or an elite tight end, I mean, you're going to see you're probably going to see their Super Bowl odds drop further. You may see this line get smaller on them in the division. They were a top 5 offense last year, in DVOA standards and in a lot of different standards as well. So, just in terms of yards per play as well, like just raw measurement. I mean, the Lions were a good offensive unit, and that was with trading TJ Hawkinson mid-year. So this team can move the ball. They've got David Montgomery back there. I think he's actually a slight upgrade over Jamal Williams. I know Jamal Williams is very productive, but I think that was more of a product of just having a good offensive line too. This team has a lot of pieces in place. My only concern is the hype is building. It's the Lions, and Jared Goff is still the quarterback, but you have such a good infrastructure here that this team feels like it's going to be in the mix. And the fact you're still getting plus 160 plus odds for a division winner ticket, I think that the Lions are going to do it next year. I mean, I really think they're going to be a team to kind of to really have to deal with. Dan Campbell has proven, like, team goes through rough stretches, he gets them out of it. They go on winning streaks. They probably should have made the playoffs last year. They certainly made a run at it, and they were a very good team down the stretch. So a lot going right for the Lions. I really like looking at them in the futures. I think that even plus 2,500 is still fair. San Francisco, we have quarterback concerns. Kyle Shanahan, does he know how to manage a game where he's not up ahead by like 7-0 after the first quarter? The Eagles, Jalen Hurts injury issues, their defense has suddenly just lost a piece. That's a big spread between plus 850 for the Eagles and plus 2,500 for the Lions. I don't think it should be that big. You have the Cowboys in between, but this NFC is going to be wide open. you're looking at the 4 division leaders there right now in terms of odds with the Eagles, Cowboys. Sorry, not even the 4 division winners. You got the 49ers and the Eagles, and then the Cowboys. So 2 NFC East, and then the Lions are obviously third, fourth in the odds, but third in terms of division winner odds. I mean, the Lions to me still offer the best value. I think that with what they're doing on defense, it's exactly what they needed to do. And like I said, they can still add at the draft.
They added Cam Sutton as well in that secondary, which was a big move for them to bolster the back end of their defense. What I would push back on Jared Goff, he didn't throw a pick in the final 9 games of the year. Like he played very well. I mean, he played within himself. He didn't turn the ball over, and that's really all you got to ask at this point now. If you have a fringy bridge, which I'm not sure if Jared Goff's a bridge quarterback. I mean, the way he played last year and the fact they didn't take a quarterback, they could take one, I suppose, in the first round. Maybe they wait and take someone later to be the next guy, but perhaps they don't go that road. I mean, it's like weird to remember Jared Goff was just a first overall pick a couple years ago. It wasn't all that long ago that he was a first overall pick. So he's not old, right? They're not, and he's, for the most part, I don't think he's been all that injured. I mean, he plays. Has he played well? No. I mean, he played well last year. He didn't play well with the Rams, and that's why they moved off him. Or at least I shouldn't say that. He played well with the Rams. They got to the Super Bowl with him. There's just limitations. They upgraded. So when one team upgrades and decides to move on from you, it's easy to look at Jared Goff and go, well, come on. I mean, Jared Goff's not that good. Well, I think he was good. They needed another step. The Rams went all in, as we know. The Rams went all in, and they don't have any draft picks as a result of that.
Jared Goff's 28. He had his best QBR rating of his career last season. Actually, second best, excuse me. Yeah, the other one, but his best was 2018, the year they went to the Super Bowl. I think that was the year they went to the Super Bowl.
18-19 season, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So second highest touchdown rate of his second highest touchdown total of his career. Actually, his best interception rate, so lowest number of interceptions per pass attempt. I'm not going to reel off every stat. I certainly dive deeper than that, but it was pretty encouraging what he did. He's got a legitimate slot receiver who is good at scheming to get open in Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got weapons on the outside with Jameson Williams coming in. Is he the quintessential quarterback who's going to necessarily be able to blow the doors off? No, but he can certainly run. The Lions have the weapons to run an offense where they can make Jared Goff capable. I mean, they have DeAndre Swift out of the backfield. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. If they had a tight end, I think they'd be in really, really good shape. So their defense improves. They're not going to have to rely on Goff as much either. But Goff is kind of just I always kind of thought he got disrespected for the Rams. He went 24-7 in his second and third year with the Rams, with McVay. And yeah, I get it. He maybe couldn't get them over the hump, or he wasn't he's not as an elite quarterback as Matthew Stafford was in his prime, but he's not chopped liver either. I mean, no. He's like you said, he's a former number 1 pick. He's a pretty good distributor of the ball. He's accurate. He doesn't make silly decisions with his legs a lot of the time. He's not getting hit a ton. It's a pretty good quarterback, man. I think that the Lions can probably win with him, but that requires improving the defense for sure, which they're doing, which they've done already. So,
well, timing and situation matters too. When they moved off of Jared Goff, San Francisco was in their way with a really good roster. Still to this day, good roster. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks were a problem. Good team, good roster. And why am I blanking on the 4th team in that division? Seattle, San Fran, the Rams, and who's the
Cardinals?
Okay, and the Cardinals were 8-0 a couple years. Yeah, and Kyler Murray was the number 1 pick in the draft too. So, and Sean McVay almost gets in his own way if you think about it too. He's just a next level thinker. He was babying Jared Goff, and that may have actually been a detriment to the overall team, because how could Jared Goff have confidence when all the chit chat of that Super Bowl run, that when the 15 seconds hit and you can't hear the coach anymore, you're a deer in the headlights. So. We're giving Jared Goff a lot of love on the start of the show, and I think that's fair. So they may have their quarterback for the next 10 years if Jared Goff plays like he did last year. So we do have news by the way. So we start with the Lions, and we have news on the Texans. And I think this relates in some ways to the draft, because if we think the Texans take Bryce Young after CJ Stroud goes first overall to Carolina, well, they're starting. These two moves the Texans just pulled off. They signed Devin Singletary, formerly of Buffalo, 1-year deal per Adam Schefter. And the other one, Tom Pelissero reporting from NFL Network, Dalton Schultz, 1-year deal up to $9 million. So Dalton Schultz only gets a 1-year deal. You got a tight end and a running game added to. Now they lost Brandon Cooks, as we discussed. So that relates to the Brandon Cooks news too. We can talk about Dallas, but we'll just react instantly here to this news for the Texans, putting pieces around the young quarterback. That's what I think.
Oh, absolutely. Dalton Schultz makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. Especially for having a younger quarterback. Obviously the team just lost Brandon Cooks, and I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if the Texans go and try to add more help at the draft, especially wide receiver. They did bring in Robert Woods as well. But Nico Collins, who's had trouble staying on the field. Noah Brown is actually pretty decent. I think that's a decent signing. But again, those are more depth pieces. The Texans definitely need to add a little bit more. Schultz can definitely help. I mean, very solid receiver over the middle. I think he very much benefited from Dallas's scheme, which was, run heavy attack. Obviously, seeping the tight end off, from the slot, over the middle. Really, really difficult to cover when you're playing the Cowboys. I don't know if that'll be the case with the Texans, but he's still young. I mean, he's still, like very good pass catcher. So I don't mind it. I do think they need to bring in someone else at wide receiver to really just kind of bolster that corpse. But I'm surprised he only got 1 year. And I think that kind of speaks. I think the reason why Schultz, if I had to just guess, the tight end class is very strong this year in the draft. And I think there's a lot of teams who are probably waiting and seeing, and they want to grab one of these tight ends, and that's going to kind of be their answer. So Schultz, $9 million a year, it's a lot. And I think that he probably just chose money over term. Right. With, again, the idea that he can be a free agent now next year and potentially get a 3-year deal still. So, and he may get more targets. I mean, Schultz is a player who was, he earned his targets with Dallas. I mean, he was essentially their number 2 receiver when he was healthy. So, I mean, I like it for the Texans for fantasy purposes. Probably want to see how this all shakes out, but I think Schultz is probably in the conversation. I mean, I'm just looking at their roster. I mean, Brevin Jordan, Tegan, I can't even pronounce his name, Quitteriano. He's still on the roster, a decent red zone target, but Schultz is going to be the guy there who earns the starting role, no doubt. Just depends who they bring in. It's going to be, I'm almost positive it's going to be Bryce Young. So Bryce Young throwing passes to Dalton Schultz sounds pretty good, but if Schultz is acting as the de facto number 1 receiver, that's not great. Certainly Houston would want to add probably, a little bit more elite player there. So the interesting case for fantasy is definitely the Devin Singletary move. 1-year deal, $3 million, but Singletary is he looked fine to me last year. I mean, he's a good pass catching back. So he can work in that role a little bit. It definitely brings Dameon Pierce down a little bit in my mind. To have a veteran back there who can just come in, even if it's just 6 snaps, when they figure out that Devin Singletary is pretty good out of the backfield, I mean, it's probably going to take a little bit of opportunity away from Pierce. So don't love it. I'm not shocked. The one thing I'll say about Dameon Pierce, this is probably better than if they drafted a running back, like an elite, another athlete. Then you could have a real, 1A situation. I think this is better. Singletary's
this is a complimentary move.
Yeah, this is a 1-year deal. I mean, it's not great, but I wouldn't be scared off of Dameon Pierce next year. He's their guy. He's the dude who carried them last year. They know what they have. I don't think Devin Singletary's coming in taking, 20 touches a game. I'd be pretty shocked, but it certainly drags his ADP down a little bit. But again, this is the modern NFL. I mean, everyone's got multiple running backs. There's very few situations where you just feel comfortable that a guy is, slated for 20, 25 touches. So bumps Pierce down a bit, but it's nothing I'm overly worried about. Singletary's a good player, though. Don't get me wrong. Like he will absolutely earn some touches there. I'd be pretty shocked if he didn't.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it just adding more. Now, like you said, I think receiver, you hit the nail on the head. The problem with receiver now too for the Texans is it's not a great receiver draft. So where could they add? Now they added Woods, they got Brown, but where else could they add to shore up that particular position? It would have to be via trade, but they just traded Brandon Cook, so I'm not entirely sure. But Nick Caserio's got a lot of picks. He's got of course, the quarter. We think it's Bryce Young or Stroud. It's going to be one of the two, I think, or Richardson, possibly. We have a long way to go. Not that long, a month and change till the draft. And then they also have the 12th pick in the draft. So maybe a receiver. The Ohio State kid, I think, is supposed to be in the mid first round range. So maybe if they're high on a receiver, they'll take a receiver. They just added the tight end. So I don't know. Look, Jacksonville Jaguars. I know we got a lot of Jacksonville folks. Emerson Lazio. Not a lot. It's just him. But the Jags had a great year, and they should be the favorite. But I mean, if the Texans, if they hit on the quarterback, I mean, plus 1,000 to win the division, there might be a little value. Small S. Small V. Small S.
Maybe.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, no, I mean, look, like it's legitimate. It's fine to think about. I mean, DeMeco Ryans head coach. Like I like the move. I think there's potential there. I just question if they can turn the defense around in time. I just don't know if there's going to be enough to like. If I was going to take a shot with the Texans, I would wait and see what they did. I'm very confident they're going to have Bryce Young. So that's not the part that worries me. What worries me is can they increase the wide receiver ability level a little bit, and what do they do on defense? So they have picks. I just don't know if they have enough capital to necessarily turn it all around this year. Like they're not in the Bears situation where they have a ton of cap space. And quite frankly, like we're already later into free agency. Like if they were going to make some of those moves, it would have happened. So they added, I feel like Texans year away from kind of being that team. In the best case with the Texans, honestly, is that they're terrible again this year. They win like 4 or 5 games. Bryce Young shows some promise. And then we get them around maybe plus 600-700 for next year. Right. Then we can talk about them, right? Then maybe they can be that team on the rise. That's kind of what happened with the Bengals, right? They had that first year under Joe Burrow, didn't really look that good. They had all these holes, and then all of a sudden they took that second year leap. Good point. It was like, oh, this team isn't that bad. I think that's probably what you're looking at with the Texans. So that division, though, outside of the Jags, I mean, I don't know what the Titans or
I respect the Titans because they're well coached. Vrabel gets the most out of their roster. The roster's not that great. And with the Colts, they're in the Lamar Jackson talks, I think, or they're one of the teams rumored to be connected to him.
Yeah.
It seems like the Colts always are to go out and get a quarterback.
It does make some sense, dome stadium. I mean, Lamar could really burn up on that turf. Got Pittman, some big tight ends to work with.
Jonathan Taylor.
Alec Pierce. Yeah, Taylor right out of the backfield. If I was going to take a shot, that's probably where I'd go. I don't love it. They have a rookie head coach as well, but if I was looking for a team to take a shot on in the NFC South, it'd probably be the Colts. I think I actually don't mind them trading Stephon Gilmore as well. He's getting up there, man. Like Gilmore could easily be falling off a cliff this season. So I kind of like that move. Yeah, I'd probably look at the Colts, but that's very dependent on them landing Lamar. If they don't land Lamar, I wouldn't have the same kind of. And I mean, obviously, like you're not going to get this number if they land Lamar. If they land Lamar, they're going to go to like plus 200 minimum. So
minimum, I would agree.
Yeah, maybe even they'll probably even be shorter than that. So yeah, Colts there, but honestly, I look at that division. Not since we're on the subject, I even just take the Jags. I don't know.
No, the Jags feel a little, slightly. That's the small S and slightly overvalued at minus 160.
That's a division where I honestly no one really interests me at this point. Like I said, the Colts do, but it's so dependent on one move. If the move doesn't work out, you could be left with like Will Levis and who else is on their roster. I don't even know who their backup is at this point. So.
Okay, before we go to golf and hockey, quick second on, so you mentioned Stephon Gilmore. He goes to the Cowboys, and so does Brandon Cooks. So Cooks leaves Houston, And now he's going to Dallas. So he stays in Texas. Do those two moves, and you mentioned, you kind of hinted at what you feel about the Gilmore acquisition. Now, Gilmore is a depth high-end 2 is pretty good, I would think, in the secondary. Philadelphia, news with the Eagles, they retain Slay, they retain Cox, they lose Gardner Johnson, as we just discussed with the Lions. These 2 star players, Gilmore and Cooks, to Dallas, does that give you any itch to give the Cowboys more They lose Kellen Moore, OC now goes to the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
What's your confidence level in Dallas? Are these moves that you say to yourself, all right, they're right there with Philly?
I mean, they have a better defense than Philly. The Gilmore move is like you said, it's nice because you're not bringing him in to be like the man there. I mean, obviously you have someone on the other side in Trevon Diggs who is already kind of in that role, but he can certainly, Gilmore is going to make it very difficult for teams as well, who, maybe are trying to take advantage of like the wide receiver 2 or position. I think Gilmore still has some left in the tank. At the same time, like, the Cowboys are bringing in 2 older players. Like, they're not getting younger by these moves. Brandon Cooks is basically 30. He's been in the league for 10 years. He dropped off a little bit. His yards per his yards per target, yards per route run, dropped down a little bit. It just kind of everything was a bit of a down year. He had some soft tissue injuries with the calf muscle as well, and a wrist injury. He's got some wear on him. I know they're not bringing him in to be the guy, but they are expecting him to be like the outside receiver. I think they want to work CeeDee Lamb in the slot more. It makes sense. He's a big slot receiver, going to be going up against undersized corners a lot in that role. Mm-hmm. That's the good news. I wonder how much is left in the tank for these guys, and if they're going to be the answer to really lifting the Cowboys to that next level. I'm not necessarily convinced that it is, but Dallas was already solid to begin with. So right. I think that the Cowboys definitely have a lane here. Like, I think the Eagles are going to be gettable next year. Their defense sort of crumbled towards the end. Now they've lost Gardner Johnson. So it's not that I don't like that the Cowboys are going all in, but I probably would have rather seen them go get a little bit younger in some regards. They can shed Cooks after a year or 2. So it's kind of just like a 1-year thing, but let's see what they do. I mean, they still draft to address it. I don't hate the moves. I do like the moves more for like the Texans and the Colts, because I think that they're rightfully getting rid of some overpriced older players, which you should do once they get to a certain age. But it kind of makes sense for the Cowboys to go in on these guys. Cooks is a pretty consummate professional. He's also got a very good athletic profile. I don't think Brandon Cooks is going to fall off a cliff or anything. And this is probably a good setup for him, to be the kind of just the guy trying to take some coverage off of CeeDee Lamb at this point in his career. So interested to see what Gilmore has left. If he has anything left, it's going to be a real bolster of that defense. So yeah, I do kind of like the Cowboys. I'm not going to lie. If I was going to look in that division though, man, I'm starting to get interested in the Giants a little bit. They got a ways to go. They got to address some stuff on defense, kind of like the Lions did, and they haven't really done it yet. But they have the draft as well too. So I would probably bet the Cowboys over the Eagles at this point. But I think that the Giants are kind of interesting at plus 500 too.
I think. Well, you said this too. I think if Dalton Schultz is back there, and you've got Schultz with Cooks and CeeDee Lamb, now we're talking. They took Michael Gallup high a few years ago, but he's dropped off slightly. And Dallas does have all their picks. They draft at least once in every round.
There's about 3 or 4 teams. Like, I'd throw Jacksonville in this mix too, but a couple of these, there's at least 2 first-round tight ends. Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid. They're both, like, they look good. Like, I think Dalton Kincaid is another player who would look extremely good on the Cowboys. Just a very sure-handed receiver. Would make for an excellent red zone target. Mm-hmm. But he'd look good on, like, the Jags. He'd look good on the Lions too. So I think all 3 of those teams are going to be in potentially on these tight ends.
Yep.
And I think that the Cowboys, that is probably where their sights are in the first round, grabbing one of these guys. Cowboys are usually pretty aggressive at getting who they want to. So don't be shocked if they draft a tight end in the first round, which again, I think is smart. You bring in Cooks a little.
That would address getting younger, to your point.
Exactly, right? So, like I said, I don't hate these moves for the Cowboys at all. I like where they're going. I'm always cognizant of the fact that Mike McCarthy, though, is the coach, which it's just really hard to like the Cowboys.
Yeah, you can coach offense though. But
he's very suboptimal as a coach, in my opinion. Likes to kick field goals when he should be going for 2, likes to kick single points when he should be going for 2, likes to kick field goals when he should be going for touchdowns. Mike McCarthy legitimately makes it hard for your team to win. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, like calling plays, all that stuff, handling. I'm just saying in game, very, very suboptimal.
Situational coaching is not his strength, is what we've come to find out. Okay, so those are some NFL thoughts. And the Jags have Evan Ingram, though. That's the only thing I would say. Are they going to go get? They franchised him.
Yeah, they franchised them. So again, like for the Jags, you're right. It's more of a luxury for them, absolutely. But I don't know if they want to keep paying Evan Ingram like whatever, 10+ mil a year. So for them, if they were going out, I think that makes a sense for them to address in the draft because they can cut ties with Ingram next year.
Jeff has his fantasy golf cheat sheet out for this week. WGC Dell Technologies match play picks available now. It was released earlier this afternoon. What do we need to know? I've got the odds up here on DraftKings. We've got Scheffler, McIlroy, Rahm, Cantlay, Finau, your leaders. Scheffler at plus 800, outright winner, the favorite. What are your lead thoughts on this coming week?
Yeah, so look, this is completely different format. I'll give you guys a quick DFS rundown. For DFS match play, so the birdie or better rates, it just doesn't matter. You're looking for guys who win a bunch of holes. You're looking for guys who win their matches. And you want guys who can win big. So if you're targeting the top players, you really want those players who can get high, they have weak matchups. They can take advantage. Maybe they can win with 5 holes left. The quicker they win, the more points you get. So that's important to start off. The second part of this is you need to understand the bracket, because if you're entering a big GPP, you need to have an optimal construction. And by optimal, I mean you need to weight it so there's at least one player from each quadrant of the bracket. If you have 4 players and they're all in the same quadrant, you're just killing yourself. You're just basically making sure that you can't win a GPP before it even starts. You need to give yourself a chance of having all 4 players meet up in the semifinals. So that is the very first thing. I hopefully my hands are doing the talking here, but
it's very good. I love it.
You need to look at the bracket and you need to say, okay, I need at least one player from each of these brackets. Now you can fill it in. There's going to be some overlap because we have to put in 6 and there's not 6 brackets, but that is the first and most important thing this week. It trumps all. Look at the bracket. Give yourself a chance to win by making sure you have at least exposure to all 4 quadrants. That's the first thing. The second thing is this event is wide open. It's absolutely wide open. I think 2 years ago, we had one top 10 player make the semifinals. So you can kind of get funky here. Look for low-owned players. Feel free to leave salary on the table. But for DFS, it's a completely different week. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun building lineups too, because you can look and say, okay, I'm going to take a long shot here. I'm going to take the favorite here. I'm going to load up, take a couple long shots in this quadrant, go with the favorite in the other 2. So it's a lot of fun. From an odds perspective, last thing too, you want to be cognizant of who is in which pod, who has tough pod draws, who doesn't. I'll just give you right off the bat. I love the draw for Patrick Cantlay. He's got KH Lee. He's got Brian Harmon. He's got somebody else who I can't even remember, but he's got a very, very weak pod. That's a great draw for a guy like Patrick Cantlay, who is in extremely good form. He eats up Pete Dye courses. And Patrick Cantlay hasn't done terribly at this event. He's never made it out of his pod, but he's also never gone worse than 1-1-1. So he's never had a losing record in his pod either. So I do like Patrick Cantlay this week if you're looking at the favorites. I like Jason Day too. He's got a tougher draw. He's got Colin Morikawa, but I don't mind that. And if you're looking back further, a couple long shots I'll give off. Harris English, I think, is in a winnable pod. Russell Henley is a guy who can get very hot with his irons and putter on a format like this. He's got Tyrrell Hatton, but Henley on his best day can beat anybody, in my opinion. So that's another player. Yeah, I'll stop it there. But again, you look at you can go dknation.com. You follow me on Twitter at Fantasy Grind. I threw out I'm about to tweet it out, but if you look, I gave a pick from each bracket. So just to get you started, if you want some insight on each quadrant, I gave you a pick from each bracket. One of the picks is Cantlay. He's a favorite. Another one is English, who's like a long shot. But that's the kind of thinking you need to go into this too. You shouldn't just take the favorite in each bracket and then try and fill it out. Make some tough decisions. You can't play everyone. You have to fade some of these guys. It's a fun week, but you got to embrace that variance.
Good job, PGA Tour. Everyone's in the bracket mindset these days. With
Well, it is good. Unfortunately, it's the last year they're going to run this event because in their brilliance, they decided this is an event they didn't need, even though it's the only match play event on the calendar. So I don't know why they canceled it, but it's really too bad. Anyways, it's the last year of this event. So
all right. Well, everyone's in the bracket spirit, so keep that in mind. It's like hedging too. When you have like futures, it's kind of the same mindset. You got to pick and choose in different areas. See, now I'm doing the hand thing. Okay, that's all the time we have. We can't get to hockey, Jeff. We got to get out of here.
We got to get out of here.
Yeah.
The cops come.
Okay. Hand movements. Here we go. Thanks to Matt and Eamon behind the scenes. For Jeff Ulrich, Brendan Glasheen, thanks for tuning in. We are back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time for The Sweat to get you caught up in all things in daily fantasy sports as well as the sports betting world. Thanks for watching.